The theologian James Fowler developed a theory of the stages of faith development through which people would ordinarily progress as their faith matures throughout their lives. When we talk about faith development in this context, he's not talking about how much somebody believes, how strongly they believe, how much you love God, or how good you are. Rather, what he's speaking about really is around a certain maturity of faith that reflects how integrated your faith is with your life's experience. I'll put a link and a description of these 6 stages in the description of the video below. Look at the 6 stages. Stages 1 and 2 are very much childhood stages, so I won't worry about those for the sake of adults. Stage 3 is really the focus. Stage 3 is where adolescents and adults who come to faith, we usually all arrive. It's a stage where we've made sense of the world. We have a faith that matches our experience, it makes sense of the world, and we usually belong to a community that both helps to prepare and to reinforce that belief. So for us who belong to a church and we believe what the church says, very much stage 3 describes that kind of faith dynamic. It's a good place to be. The next stage though, stage 4, is a place which is very uncomfortable because it's a place of doubt and questioning and sometimes despair. And that's why it's actually a great stage for us to help to understand the experience of St. Thomas we hear in the gospel today. Thomas, of course, we all know as the one who doubted, who when Jesus appeared to the disciples as risen again, Thomas wasn't there for reasons we don't know. And so when the other disciples say, "Hey Thomas, we've seen Jesus and he's alive," Thomas quite reasonably doubted that. It was an incredible thing for anyone to believe sight unseen. And so it must have been a very uncomfortable place for Thomas to be around other people whom he used to believe the same as, but now they've experienced something and believe something he doesn't. Perhaps you've been in that situation yourself, where something has happened, some crisis has challenged your faith in some way. For some people, this crisis can be an experience of suffering or tragedy, either personally or when we look at the suffering in the world, that makes people say, if there's a loving God, how can these things happen? For other people, it may be an experience about our own selves. Perhaps it is an awareness of our own limitation. It could be some understanding of our sexuality as it emerges. It could be an awareness of an addiction we have that we just can't quite kick by our own willpower. And these are the kind of experiences which can often trigger a crisis of faith. For other people, it's simply intellectual knowledge. It's discovering the theory of evolution or discovering biblical criticism which challenges a literal understanding of the Bible. These are all the kinds of things which can trigger this crisis of faith. And when we get to that crisis, there's really 3 ways we can act. One is that we have our stage 3 faith, and this new crisis emerges, and we don't want to be there. It's uncomfortable, so we simply reject it. We say, no, look, I'm not thinking about that. That can't be true. And we hold fast to our original faith. This, unfortunately, what seems secure is where fundamentalism can emerge. Fundamentalism is as much an emotional reaction as it is a theological one to the complexity and challenges of life. So that's one unhealthy response to the crisis of faith. The second one, though, is that we move in the direction of this new information. So perhaps it is to believe the world is terrible, there's suffering, God can't be real. And so we reject the faith we had before. We move off into a place of non-belief or very different belief in some other way. And that, of course, is also a stage many people go through, but it's not always a healthy response. We probably all know people who've gone through this, who used to believe, they used to love God, they used to be in church, but something's happened, something that's often hurt them, that simply led them far away. Chances are they've gone through this dynamic, this crisis of faith. Instead, the healthy response is to try to push through from the stage 3 security of a faith that makes sense to move into this 4th stage where life doesn't actually make sense. There's a place of doubt, questioning, despair. We might feel like we are very alone on our spiritual journey. Suddenly, the people around us don't believe the same we do. We might find it hard to have the words, the language to describe what we're going through. It's uncomfortable. It can hurt. And it can be something that might resolve quickly, but it can often be something that lingers for many, many years. People don't want to be there. It's so hard to be in. So people are more likely to take one of those first 2 responses. So many people, including ourselves in church, are often likely to be in that stage 3 because we don't want to go to stage 4. But if we're able to push through that uncomfortableness, we can arrive at Fowler's fifth stage, which is a really wonderful, broad, mature stage of faith. It's a stage where we know, where we believe in God, we know our faith, and we have a devotion to God, and yet we know we don't have all the answers. We know there are things which my faith does not explain about the world anymore. We know there are people with other religions, other faiths, other ways of seeing the world that are also valid, and I'm no longer challenged by people having a different way of seeing God than I do. When you meet these people at this fifth stage, you find them usually very broad-minded, very large-hearted. They're not challenged by you saying something contrary to them. In fact, they want to have a respectful dialogue with you rather than shut you down or prove that you're wrong and prove that they're right. It's a wonderful place to get to, but it's hard to get to. But in fact, it's the place that Thomas does get to. Thomas is a wonderful model for us of moving through the third, fourth, and fifth stages. So remember, Thomas asked good questions. He said, look, I want to see Jesus myself. If I'm going to believe this, I want to have more information. I want to have an experience that confirms what you say is true. Unfortunately, Thomas gets to have that request answered. The next week, he sees Jesus. He gets to see Jesus alive and touch his wounds. And at that point, Thomas kneels down and says, my Lord and my God. It's really significant. He says, my God, because nobody else in all the Gospels calls Jesus God. They call him Rabbi, Lord, Master. They come to Son of God. But no one ever calls Jesus God. Thomas gives the highest affirmation of faith in Jesus and highest understanding of Jesus' identity of anybody because he dared to doubt, because he dared to take his hands off the rung of that third stage of faith and to reach out in the void of confusion and nothingness to be able to move up and take hold of a higher stage of faith. And so that's actually the encouragement for us too, that if we dare to go through the wrestling with doubt and questioning, that we might then also actually grow to a deeper, stronger, more integrated faith. But here's what Thomas does that I encourage you to do too. Thomas sticks around in his community while he doubts. Thomas could have said on that first night after the resurrection, when the other disciples said, we've seen Jesus, he said, no, that's not true, you're all crazy, and walked away. And if Thomas had walked away, he would not have been there the following week when Jesus came back and showed himself to Thomas. It took Thomas hanging in there in this uncomfortable place to be there when the information, the experience he needed came along. And so too for us. And so I really want to say, especially to young people, and teenagers very much especially, is stick around in church, even if you don't believe everything we believe, even if you have doubts and questions that you don't think are resolved yet. Stick around, belong to the church, because I do believe if you belong and you keep exploring with good people, you will find the people who can inspire you, and you'll find in the end the experience that leads you to deeper, stronger faith. This is what St. Thomas does. This is what I encourage you to do. And I encourage, if you're watching this video, maybe forward this to someone you know who is in that wrestling, doubting stage. Because I really believe that Thomas is such a great model for us, and that Fowler's schema can help us to grow to a deeper, stronger faith. I invite you to make any comments you like in the comments below. God bless you on your journey of faith.